Howdy, this is Jonathan Scott. Welcome to John's D&D Vlog, episode number 61. We hit the 1,200 subscriber mark. Thanks a lot. I'm not going to make these announcements with each 100 from now on, but I will make them from time to time each time we hit some kind of a watermark that feels significant. As usual, as always with these module reviews that I do, please, if you're a player, don't watch this because I'm going to be giving away stuff that'll make your experience less fun. So please don't watch this episode any further if you're a player. So I finished the D series of modules with my last episode, right? Wrong. In issue 298 of The Dragon from August of 2002, they went into detail on a lot of the locations inside the city of Retaliation. They also included a good map of the place. I redrew it myself for my own campaign and added some of my own info to it. It's just what I like to do. When my players first began D1 Descent into the Depths of the Earth, one of them mentioned in passing how he would like to destroy an Elder Brain, the center of any Mind Flayer community. An Elder Brain is merely a collection of dead Mind Flayer skulls placed in a brine of some sort. Because of the liquid, the remnants of these dead Mind Flayers can communicate with one another, and as a group, the Elder Brain develops its own level of consciousness and power. If there are enough skulls placed here, the power of the Elder Brain can rival the power of a demigod or even a lesser deity. If you'd like to read up on it, the source I used was the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual. You can find it as part of the Mind Flayer listing. I thought the party going up against an Elder Brain could be fun, so I started thinking about it. Here are the maps I made for the Anti-Solar Institute in Retaliation. The only thing about this that Wizards of the Coast can lay claim to is the name. I read the article from the Dragon and such, but I more or less just went off and did something completely different. Let's look through the maps, and then I'll go into some of the war stories my party had here. My party went into the Anti-Solar Institute 3 times. I described the first time in episode 58. They went in to rescue their friend Jeff Brooks and the cookie store owner, Brett Gold. The second time they went in, they disguised themselves as Drow and simply walked in the front door. This all happened before St. Cuthbert attacked the city and before the war I described in the last 2 episodes. The top level of the Anti-Solar Institute is designed for business meetings with the other races of the world, so non-Mind Flayers are a pretty common sight here. So they had a good strategy. There are sentries here on every level who just walk around looking for intruders. There's also a Mind Flayer receptionist up here on level 1. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the Anti-Solar Institute is pretty much unassailable. The Mind Flayers are part of a hive mind. All the Mind Flayers in the entire area known as the Vault of the Drow, all of D3, are all in contact with one another all of the time, psionically. It's a hive mind. They're also capable of plane shifting. Plane shift is a type of teleport spell. You can plane shift within a dimension as well as to others. One more thing. Mind Flayer powers are psionic based. In other words, the adamantite in the walls of the Underdark hinder none of their powers. What does all this mean? It means that if the Anti-Solar Institute is ever attacked, and even one Mind Flayer finds out about it, all of the Mind Flayers from anywhere in this entire region, D3, the Vault of the Drow, will immediately be aware of it, and they will all immediately teleport in and defend the hive. There are about 300 Mind Flayers within this area. My party didn't realize this. They didn't know what they were up against. Had they known, they probably wouldn't have attacked. Anyway, the receptionist on level 1, once he suspected that they weren't really Drow, used DSP on them and disappeared. The party then found the door to level 2 and went down. Inside the Anti-Solar Institute, there are 2 young Mind Flayers and 2 Intellect Devourers who walk around on each level as guards. When these guards saw the group, a fight began. One of the 2 wizards who had the Master Zot spell saw the big blue floor in the center of the level and immediately flew over it. Boots of flying, right? The floor in the center of each level is transparent. You can see through it all the way down to the lowest level. Each floor, though, warps what can be seen slightly, so it makes it very hard to see what's on the lowest level in detail, but he did faintly make out something that looked like a pond with a whitish island in the middle of it. He assumed that it was the Elder Brain, and then he cast a Master Zot spell straight down. He then fell unconscious and into the pit that he had just dug. Another player, a cleric, then jumped into the pit after him, blind and deaf, hoping to somehow catch him and bring him to safety. Realizing that the entire planet just fallen to pieces, another player gave up and wished the entire party back to Eastbrook. The party now only had one wish left. The wizard who had cast the Master Zot spell would be unconscious for another 24 hours. I wasn't expecting them to do any of this, but it was fun. It was surprising, and I enjoyed it. But here's the question. How would 300 Mind Flayers react if their hive was attacked? How would they retaliate? Could the players successfully fight against 300 Mind Flayers? I decided that there was no way that they could survive this, so instead I did something very different. In Eastbrook, as they all stood around trying to figure out what to do next, 2 mind flayers for each party member plane shifted in, grabbed 1 player per pair, and then plane shifted back into the Anti-Solar Institute. Don't forget, psionics aren't hindered by the adamantite. They can teleport anywhere they wish. Also, they had ESP, so they knew where the players lived. When they all woke up, they found themselves, 2 or 3 players each, on several different levels of the Anti-Solar Institute standing in the middle of the round blue floor. The round blue floors were all just walls of force. The Master Zot destroyed them easily, but they were easily recast. The only difference now, though, was that the false elder brain on the lowest level was replaced with a floor that was now bright yellow. Yellow because of the lava underneath it that the wall of force was holding back. All around the rim, there were 20 to 30 mind flayers each who began betting on who would win the fights that were all about to begin. The players had become gladiators, after a manner anyway. On level 5, the store food of the mind flayers, an odd collection of mind-controlled humanoids kidnapped from the streets of Real Sinlu, were all released from their pens to attack. On level 6, 4 intellect devourers. On level 7, 4 high-level mind flayers, but level 8 was different. Here there were the mind flayer master and 2 ancient mind-controlled topaz dragons. You can read about topaz dragons in the 2nd edition monster manual. The Mind Flayer Master had brought the 2 wizards who knew Master Zot to his level. All of the other players were above them on higher levels, separated one group from another by walls of force. And don't forget, one of these 2 wizards had just cast Master Zot and would be unconscious for another day. The Master Mind Flayer then threatened to attack the remaining wizard if he did not teach to him the Master Zot spell. The fights all began. No one died after the first few rounds, but it was obvious that the players could not succeed, so one player chose to use the group's last remaining wish to plane shift the party back to Arcadia. The group had no more wishes available to them. The Mind Flayers were unwilling to follow them to St. Cuthbert's plane, so this was where their retaliation ended. The 3rd time the party came to the Anti-Solar Institute was after the war. A word about St. Cuthbert. In St. Cuthbert's name is the word saint. A saint is a person who is a devout follower of a god. The gods never use this title to describe themselves. They only use it to describe their followers. What does this mean? St. Cuthbert is only a lesser deity. He obeys a higher power. In the book Greyhawk Adventures, there's only one good greater deity mentioned. It's the goddess Ula. So in my campaign, I made it so St. Cuthbert was one of her followers. He had once been a very devout cleric of hers who had become so high level that Ula simply chose to deify him. He was given rule over a section of Arcadia and, in time, developed a following of his own. If you haven't seen the previous episodes on the war that occurred between Real Sinlu and St. Cuthbert, you might want to check them out to better understand all of what I'm about to say. They're episodes 57 to 60. How would a greater god deal with an underling of hers who chose to start a war with another greater god without her permission? How would a greater god deal with an underling who performed so poorly in this war that most of the souls that were in his care, the angels, died? Ulu was not happy with St. Cuthbert. The party, who were still taking care of babies and rebuilding buildings after the war, walked up to St. Cuthbert one day to find him speaking with a very stout, short, but attractive woman. It looked as though he was being scolded. The woman then looked past St. Cuthbert and at the group, and in her own godly way knew that the party was somehow part of all that had happened. The party immediately heard a crack come from each of their pockets, and the woman disappeared. St. Cuthbert still acted as though the conversation hadn't ended, though. She was still there. The party just couldn't see her anymore. The party looked into their pockets to find that their stones of true seeing had all been destroyed. The party had originally received them to find the lost dead angel Chantel's soul in the Underdark. See episode 58 for more info on that. The stones had become pretty important to the party over time, though. Losing them now was difficult. The two 30th level wizards also found that they were no longer 30th level wizards. They lost their ability to cast magic. Ula had punished the party pretty severely for the part they played in the war. St. Cuthbert then walked away embarrassed. This was when the party realized that it was time to go. Their god was in trouble and they had somehow become a nuisance to him. Eventually they found their way to the Anti-Solar Institute again and entered. The place looked as though nothing had changed. There was still a receptionist. The building hadn't been destroyed or even looted. The party chose to go in anyway. As they progressed within the complex, they found that many of the mind flayers were simply not there anymore. The war had claimed many of their lives. There was a fight. There was actually a series of fights, but there were no longer hundreds of mind flayers to fight against. There was only perhaps 24 left, the intellect devourers and then the two ancient topaz dragons. Even the few remaining forces, though, were pretty overwhelming. The party succeeded, but it was a series of pretty hard fights. At the end of the fight, the party heard a high-pitched buzz. They immediately began searching the complex to find out where it was coming from. As DM, I set a timer. I told them that if they could solve the problem by the time the timer ran out, that the big problem that they didn't know anything about that was about to happen could be avoided, but unfortunately they never solved it in time and the big problem happened. So the name of this place is the Anti-Solar Institute, right? What does that mean? In issue 298 of The Dragon, it says that the Mind Flayers were trying to develop a medical method of counteracting the effects of sunlight on Underdark races. But that's not what the name of this building is. It's the Anti-Solar Institute. They hate the sun. So in my campaign, the goal of this place isn't just to fix Underdark races medically, it's to actually kill the sun. So in my campaign, the goal of this place is to turn the sun into something that they no longer hate. Up here on the top floor, they developed a weapon that looks like it popped straight out of a Max Fleischer Superman cartoon. It was a ray gun that would alter the brightness of the sun. The Mind Flayers knew that they still needed the heat of the sun, and they knew that they still needed the gravity that the sun generated as well. It was just the brightness of it that they hated, so it was the brightness that they attacked. The ray gun, if fired, would reduce the brightness of the sun by 75%. This would make it so that all the Underdark races, including vampires, could walk on the surface of the planet freely. Unfortunately, they had a problem. They had figured out how to darken the sun, they just didn't know how to shoot their beam through a mountain of adamantite. Fortunately for them, though, St. Cuthbert provided this solution when he burned the huge hole through the ceiling during the war. Now all they needed was simply to wait until the sun positioned itself naturally to a place where the Mind Flayer's ray could get to it. And after several months of waiting, it finally happened. When the master died, he sent word to his scientists working up on level 1 to hurry and finish. So they did. The high-pitched buzz was the beam that attacked the sun. The players managed to destroy the machine and the attendants of it, but the damage was done. The world was now dark. They stepped outside to take a look at what had happened, and they noticed that the few remaining people roaming the streets of Arilhe Sinlu, the looters, were all just like they were, standing there staring up at the now darkened sun. That was when they realized how large their failure had been. The entire solar system was now doing exactly what they were doing. Everyone in the entire solar system was now standing outside, staring up at what was left of their sun. A dying sun, a broken sun, how do you fix that? Deus ex machina. Deus means God, ex machina means out of the machine. It's when a storyteller uses an outside force that really has nothing to do with the story at all to solve a problem for his characters. In writing, it's considered to be cheating and a sign of a bad storyteller. The way the players solved their problems was through Deus, but it wasn't entirely ex machina. I mentioned Grandfather briefly in episode 56, but I neglected to show him in any of the D-module episodes, even though he did actually play a smaller part in them. Every time anyone in the multiverse casts a god-level spell for the first time, something happens to them. They meet Grandfather. Grandfather is the god of the gods. When I cast my first god-level spell in Fred's world in the 80s, I met Grandfather as well. Apparently in the multiverse, Grandfather likes to keep tabs on everyone who's using higher-level magic. During your interview with him, you roll a 1d100. In Fred Funk's campaign, this was called your likability roll. You want to roll a big number. The bigger the number, the more Grandfather likes you. In my campaign, the two 30th level wizards had both met him. One rolled poorly, but not so poorly as to have his spells stripped from him, or to be outright killed for that matter. The other rolled better, but still not amazingly well. With the sun now dark, the players had no idea how to fix it, so they thought that they might get some help from Grandfather. The problem was that they didn't really know how to contact him. The only time when they knew for sure a contact would occur is when a player first casts a god-level spell, and they had both used their own chances up. Jeff Brooks, though, they didn't know if he had used his chance or not, so they went to Arcadia. Jeff Brooks, once he had been rehabilitated, had been given a job as a teacher on Arcadia. He was still a mess emotionally, but he was coherent enough to get through his days. The party approached him and asked him for his help. What they found out was that he had always been too scared to cast a god-level spell, so he hadn't used up his chance to meet Grandfather yet. The party talked him into going into a field and casting a Master Zot spell straight up, and then speaking with Grandfather for them, to see if he would fix the sun for them. Jeff Brooks did it. He rolled his likability roll well enough, and Grandfather told him that if the group finished the Elder Brain and stopped causing problems in the cosmos, that he would return the sun to its full strength. Jeff woke up a day later and told the party what Grandfather had said. Jeff then went back to his classes. As the party returned to the Anti-Solar Institute, they looked at the great hole left in the ceiling and saw Lu Xin hovering below it. They then saw him fly out of it, along with many other creatures, all of which appeared to be vampires. The world now had some pretty serious problems because of their failure, and it was time to fix it. They proceeded down to the lowest level and searched for the Elder Brain, but they couldn't find it. The entire Anti-Solar Institute was designed to look something like an egg. When players roam around for a longer amount of time, they just accept that the design is like an egg and stop thinking about other possibilities. Eventually, one cleric cast Commune with Nature, a cleric spell in 2nd edition, and the entire design of the module where plants and animals could be found was revealed. This is how the players found out about the real position of the Elder Brain. In the brine where the skulls are small fish that the new infant mind flayers feed off of. Those tiny fish were all that was needed in order for the Commune with Nature spell to work and show them where the Elder Brain really was. When you think about it, where would a race of plane-shifting psionic using monsters keep their most sacred thing? Behind 10 feet of adamantite. I do admit that I made a mistake here. Adamantite blocks magic. The real Elder Brain was behind 10 feet of adamantite over here, and that amount of adamantite should have been enough to block the effects of the cleric's Commune with Nature spell. 20/20 hindsight, I guess. But how else would the players have found it? I don't know. I didn't design the Anti-Solar Institute to be a difficult experience for my players. I designed it to be the best the Mind Flayers were capable of. I designed it to be a perfect fortress. Were it run correctly, with a very good DM, no player should have had a chance to succeed here. So perhaps my mistake was good for the game. Had it really been impenetrable, my players would have gotten bored and perhaps even quit right at the finish line of the campaign. That wouldn't have been fun. In my campaign, new Mind Flayers are spawned in the pool of the Elder Brain. So new Illithids look something like tadpoles. Eventually they grow in size and climb out of the pool. They remain there, though, until they finally learn how to plane shift themselves out. Once out, they're brought into the main collective and become students until they mature. So when the party used their Wand of Stone Shape to break in, it shouldn't have surprised them at all, but when they saw the 30 naked Mind Flayer youth run out to attack them, it was pretty shocking to them. None of them, though, were very strong, but each of them did have access to one very weak psionic blast. After the fight, they entered the room of the Elder Brain and were immediately attacked by illusions, attempts at possession, fear, etc. The party was without their True Seeing stones, but one cleric was high enough level now to cast his own True Seeing spell, so the illusions did not work on him, and he was able to warn the rest of the party. The charms also did not work. Only one attack succeeded in killing any of them. The Dwarven Psionic Fighter was killed by a Psychic Crush. In my campaign, an Elder Brain has no physical means of attack. All of its attacks must be mental. Against my players, though, nothing that the Elder Brain could dish out affected them much that day. They were just very lucky. The party ended up winning easily. They leveled because of it, though, and the highest level cleric became capable of casting 7th level spells. And so even the one player who did die was resurrected. So the players won, and then Grandfather fixed their son, and all was well. The players, though, still had one more thing that they wanted to do before they retired their characters. Module Q1, Queen of the Demon Web Pits. I'll save that one for the next episode, though. I hope you enjoyed the story. It was a lot of fun. I'll see you next week. Have a good week. Have good games. Have a nice day.